And we are officially live with our fifth and final cafecito of this season. If you ask me right now, am I holding back tears? A little bit, but we're going to ignore the fact that this is the final cafecito, y'all. So bienvenidos, welcome to Cafecito con LatinxEd. So excited to have all of y'all here with us today. Please share in the chat. Where is it that you're joining us from? How excited are you for this cafecito and the mighty fellows that we have here with us all today? We are so excited to welcome you to this space where we'll get a chance to unpack and discuss some very juicy topics. But with this being our fifth cafecito, this might be the first one for y'all. We just want to let y'all know what it usually entails with Cafecito con LatinxEd. So as you might know, our mission at LatinxEd is to invest in Latinx leadership and expand educational equity and opportunity in North Carolina. So with this in mind, we launched Cafecito con LatinxEd, a space where we could have conversations about all things related to educational equity for our familias y comunidad in North Carolina. This season, y'all, it is a very special one because all of our guests are our 15 amazing LatinxEd fellows. Like y'all are saying Angel, Marjorie, Mauricio here. They are just examples of the true leadership and brilliance that exists within this fellowship. And each and every single one of them have taken the next step in their leadership journey and joined the LatinxEd familia in advocating on behalf of the LatinxEd community. So y'all, there are some juicy topics ahead of us, and we are inviting you to join us on this lifelong journey of learning. But before we get into it, before we start talking about nuestra presencia, an underrepresented group in a represented society, I would like for our mighty fellows to introduce themselves and give y'all a little bit of a sneak peek about what is ahead for y'all. So Angel, please take it away.
Awesome, thank you, Carol. So good afternoon, buenas tardes. My name is Angel Garcia. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am the assistant director at Centro Hispano at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and I serve as the director of the Mi Casa Mentoring Program. I am a proud son of an immigrant, so I'm a second generation immigrant. I was born and raised in Managua, Nicaragua, but I call Tampa Bay, Florida home. And a little bit of my educational journey, I attended Florida International University in Nova Southeastern in South Florida. My degrees, my grad work is in student affairs, conflict analysis and resolution emphasis. And so I like to argue and I like to win my arguments, very stereotypical of me. That's what I do. In Mi Casa, essentially, Mi Casa is a college access and success mentoring program. So what I do and how I navigate the system, what I do for my community is to create pathways for educational equity and essentially do the best I can to inform, to have early access of information to my students and families so that they can make the best decision possible for themselves in hopes of a better future. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Love that, Angel. Thank you so much. Marjorie, please come through.
Buenas tardes. Hello. I'm Marjorie Campo Ringler, and I am soy colombiana, second generation immigrant. My parents paved the way here. They came here in the 60s. Colombiana and from the coast, from Barranquilla. I ended up studying educational leadership. I went to FIU for my bachelor's. And then Stetson University for my master's, and the University of Florida for my doctorate. A lot of my school teaching and administration experience was in Florida. And once I obtained my doctorate, I moved to Greenville, North Carolina in 2005 to work at East Carolina University as a professor. So my life, my career has been centered around preparing principals, preparing school leaders, and my Latinx part of that world has been to educate our leaders to value multilingualism and to help them understand the benefits, the challenges, and therefore created a certificate where we're hoping to educate administrators to implement programs in schools for students to grow their heritage language, and then to add English to their language. So that's a fun fact about myself. It's turned out to be a lifelong goal, dream, doing a lot of great things here in North Carolina, and I hope to share some more in this cafecito.
I love that, y'all. And even though Angel and Marjorie shared their own fun facts, I'm going to sneak in another fun fact that they too share. They got moves you wouldn't believe. If you see them on the dance floor, they are just amazing. So not me putting y'all on the spot like y'all that way, but I think that is also connected to embracing our identity, our culture, and just the joys that come with our Latinidad. Last but certainly not least, Mauricio, come through and wrap us up.
As long as my internet holds up, we'll be happy to. So my name is Mauricio Restrepo. I am the assistant principal at A.L. Brown High School in Kannapolis City Schools. Also the assistant principal of the year over here. So I'll brag on myself just a little bit there. My family is from Colombia, Medellin, Colombia to be exact. It's the most beautiful place in all of Colombia. I say that in jest. To Marjorie, but you know, my parents came over here with my brother before I was born, so I'm the first generation, and then they moved to New Jersey, then Connecticut, and then I moved down here to North Carolina eventually, into this beautiful state. I did a little bit of schooling up in Boston and then Southern Connecticut State University to get my bachelor's, and then eventually down here to get my master's in school administration at UNC Charlotte. And that was a wonderful program. With the Latinx community, honestly, just trying to do the best I can to help every single student I can, regardless of background, but especially my Hispanos, right? Trying to get them to be successful. You know, our mission here at the high school I work at is to really make sure that they reach their full potential. And that's what I'm trying to do every single day. Get them to see their value, get them to see that they have worth, and get them to see that their goals mean something. Fun facts about me: I have 3 kids and a beautiful wife, and everything I do is for them. My parents worked really hard to give me a life that was better than theirs, and that's what I'm trying to do today, is give my family, my kids, a life that was better than mine.
Not you trying to get us to start tearing up, Mauricio, okay? But thank you all so much for that. And we are already getting some repping happening in the chat. We have some of our fellows showing up. We got Erika saying Kannapolis NC and saying representing that K, Mauricio Restrepo y nuestra comunidad. And we also have Veronica letting us know that Wilmington repping. Y'all, if you had just joined the chat, if you just joined this cafecito, please let us know in the chat where is it that you're joining us from and how excited is it that you are for this cafecito, because if these fellows gave you any idea, they are going to be knocking out a home run with the topic of today, which is Nuestra Presencia, an underrepresented group in a represented society. And just with the tidbits that they gave us right now, they're clearly putting in the work to make this happen. So y'all, without further ado, let's dive into this juicy, to say the least, topic. So y'all, I'm just super curious. What are some of the myths and realities associated with representation that you have encountered?
Yeah. So I think it's I will start by saying there's always this tension between seeing communities of color as from a deficit model rather than as assets ourselves. And representation is one of them, I believe. It's what I would call a double-edged sword. We yearn for representation. We are equating representation with not just being welcome, but respected and feeling like we belong. Though in my experience, I walk that tension carefully, since you have to make a choice. And that choice is always, do you want to be the trailblazer? Do you want to represent a community and thus sacrificing in a way or jeopardizing your own well-being? Because representation comes with responsibility, right? And so even though a lot of times we see representation as something that we need in order to redistribute resources or to balance the playing field, that comes with a price. And a lot of the times that price is not mentioned until you're in the middle of it. And so as I try to represent my community, I also try to inform them as to what representation means, or it has meant in my experience.
Angel, you just gave me shivers with what you said, that we're not told the price that comes connected to representation. Ooh, and I'm seeing some heavy nods from Marjorie over there.
Yeah, so I'd like to also, one of the big myths is that just because you have one Hispanic person on a committee or one Hispanic person, like in my case, we have two now, in a college, in a department, that we represent all Hispanics, right? So, we have a lot of similarities among Hispanics, but we are not all the same. So if you were to ask any one of us, where are you from, or what's your heritage? We're immediately going to jump to say, oh, I'm Colombiana, I'm Mexicana, right? We're not going to say, oh, I'm Hispanic. I think that's more of a label that was given to us to kind of represent the whole group. So I would say that the reality is that if we are truly represented and we belong, right, we're going to be asked for our opinion and value it just like you would anybody to my left or to my right. But ideally, you would have many more of us in the same space, not just one.
That is real, right? Because, you saying like, oh, we've got one. And that only pushes further the idea of the monolith, right? Which we know, how erroneous that is. But then if that is a person's only approximation to our community, they're just like, see, I knew that y'all were all alike. And it's like the eye twitch starts happening. And it's like, how can I navigate this learning moment with this person right now? Ooh.
Yeah, I think, Marjorie, I think to add on to that, if we're going to be, truly 34% of the population, right? Then, and I can talk about Kannapolis City Schools, right? Where the Hispanic population is almost 35% of our population, right? I think we're 17% of the population in North Carolina. We should represent 17% of the population in all of our spaces, right? And so I think you would hit the nail on the head with that, where just because we have one, right, doesn't mean it's everybody, right? I am the only Colombian I know that goes or has anything really to do with El Bron High School, right? The families I meet are from El Salvador, from Guatemala, from Mexico, from all those countries, and my story isn't the same as theirs. My story is incredibly different from theirs. My story is incredibly different from both of yours, I'm sure. And we shared some of those stories too, but my story is just, it's mine, and it's mine to have, and really truly, we want to be able to represent our heritage. We want to be able to say, yes, we can do this, but at the same time, we also have to empower those around us to know they can do it as well.
Ooh. Mauricio, I love that thought. And it's more of a sense of like, even though our journeys are different, how can we find those similarities within our own community to be able to say, hey, even though I haven't walked in your shoes, like I know that I can't see it, and I can't even say like, oh, I understand where you're coming from, because if you haven't gone through it, you truly can't. You can still put yourself in that situation of, I will support you however shape and form I can. And if you grant me that trust to share your story with me, I will do what I can to continue supporting you, even though I don't fully understand what it is that you have gone through. I can empathize to the certain point that where I can guarantee you that I will do what I can to provide you with the resources that you need. And that is just within our own community, right? I mean, you were talking from your own perspective, Mauricio, y'all. And this is just the first question, y'all. So if you are just joining us, we are talking about nuestra presencia, an underrepresented group in a represented society. If you are just joining us, y'all, please let us know in the chat, where is it that you are joining us from? And also, if you are one of the lovely, lovely people joining us live, if you have any questions for our mighty fellows, please know that if you drop it in the chat, they're going to be answering them for you. So I don't know if I just put our fellows in a tight spot by saying that, but just know that is one of the things that you access by joining us live. So just going to give a little bit more of some shout outs. We've got Andrea joining us from Salisbury, North Carolina. We've got Lorena in Alamance, and we've got Monica saying, yes, Carol. So y'all, with this in mind, and this is just the first question. I know that one of the things that is used a lot during talking about representation is accessing pipelines, which in and of itself is such a problematic terminology to be using. But let's just use it right now and then unpack it afterwards. So for each and every single one of you, what are the barriers from creating, quote unquote, accessing these pipelines for Latina and BIPOC educators? And why are we not creating these spaces for them?
I think, I think one of the things that Anne had said before was we give so much of ourselves into the work that we're doing, right? And it's taxing, right? It's tiring, it's all of those things. And we really have to be able to, instead of taking all of that responsibility on ourselves, right, create the spaces for people to be successful around us, to grow leaders around us. Right. And so I look at, Angel and Mikasa and what he's doing over there, and the work that Marjorie's done at ECU too, and just the conversations they've had around how they're trying to build up other Hispanos around them so that they can too be leaders. Right. And then building the capacity within them to know that they have the worth, right, to be leaders. And so I think this is not a today or tomorrow fix. Right. And so we have to be those trailblazers. We have to build that path for those after us to be able to be successful and do those things that we're doing. Right. But it's just making sure that they have the ability to know it's possible. And that's the beginning, right? That's the absolute beginning, is knowing that it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. I think that even with that word, with the word pipeline, I think it's a trigger for me, because if you look at do a quick search of the word pipeline, it's underground, is under the surface. Pipeline is creating spaces under the surface, so they are unseen, and so language matters, and barriers such as language is important, that we're not being inclusive with the language. We tend to get into arguments just by the want and need of including pronouns. People get triggered by including pronouns. And so if we get so in our feelings for something that is clearly important to those affected and not to the privileged ones, imagine something like creating systems that are not seen underground. How does that gonna work to create representation and to make us feel like we belong? And so, and there, unfortunately, in academics, I think higher education, we tend to exoticize every term, and we tend to apply any sort of common sense or logic just to defend or justify something. I not too long ago, I got into this conversation with a professor about why so defensive about not using the word pathways or access points or entryways, something that it's clearly a connector, that it's seen, that it's appreciated, that it's valued, that it's promoted, that it's front and center, because that is the representation that I want to see. And so, that's the work that we have to blaze for our future generations. Yeah.
Ooh, y'all, and Marjorie, I can see like you want to jump right into this one, but I just want to give y'all a very juicy comment that just came from Nadia, saying language is privilege, to sum up what you just said, Angel, right now. Ooh, Marjorie, please take the lead, because I'm just here like, mama, I'm being blown.
Yes, look, I want to just, enhance what Angel and Mauricio are saying. The system that is in place, right, is invisible but quite visible for those that don't belong, right? And so for Hispanics to come into higher education, to be school administrators, if you have a slight accent, that can be a barrier, right? The United States, for the most part, does not value bilingualism, multilingualism, right? Speaking two language not being valued as opposed to speaking only one language has more value is really counterintuitive. But I think that's part of that hidden system that is built for, not for people like us, but we belong here. And so, some of the things that we need to do is, break the mold. For those of us that have made it to a certain point, we need to really bring others along and show the ones in the current system the value in the asset that we bring. Diversity is, the system was not built for diversity, right? And so, but we need to show that the system is better with us, with the diverse thinking, with multilingual, with multicultural. So, and we're going to get there. We're going to get there because the more of us that get there, the more we bring others along, the more they're shocked that we are actually valuable.
And Marjorie, I think also we need to build systems, right? And so education, elementary, middle schools, high schools, pre-Ks, build systems in which we're getting people with the qualifications for those jobs, right? So we don't only just need to integrate and really, bring the diversity into those jobs, right? We have to get people, we have to create, we have to build, right, our youth to be qualified for those jobs. And I think that's where the systems break down, right? That is truly, I think, where the systems break down, where, it's very, you look at AP classes, you look at honors classes, you look at AIG programs, and they're white spaces. You don't see a lot of color in those spaces. And so building those spaces that are, so we can build those individuals to be qualified for those positions, for those to help us diversify.
Wow, y'all. And just, first of all, can you tell that I'm wowed right now by your pearls of wisdom right now? And just to give y'all a great example about how much language matters, talking about, pipelines versus pathways. Just a very recent example happening in North Carolina was the Department of Public Instruction stating that ESL classes, English as a second language, was not going to be addressed. It's not going to be addressed as English as a second language anymore, but our learners are going to be known as multilingual learners, moving away from a deficit perspective and seeing it as asset-based, as wealth, as they have so much knowledge and that they're already bringing along with them. And I would even dare say that I appreciate them saying multilingual, because oftentimes within our own community, it is said that it's only Spanish and that is also another colonial language. And we need to be able to embrace and make way for obviously Portuguese, but also the many, many indigenous languages and the richness that comes with them and the culture. So, it's like all of those points that start connecting to it, that language matters, but why does it matter? Because everything is connected to each other, and just making it visible, to Angel's point of saying pathways, that you can actually see it and making things explicit, that has an impact, right? No matter how many people start complaining about why is it that you're focusing so much on language, and it's like, well, why aren't you focusing in on language? Why are you making it such a big deal that we're trying to move past that, right? So getting off my soapbox a little bit there, but y'all, you already started talking upon the struggle of seeing ourselves in these spaces. So now my question for all of you is, why do we struggle to see ourselves in those spaces? And what are the barriers that are in place in those spaces?
Well, I could start on this one. I think that now that I'm in the space, I mean, I don't struggle seeing myself in this space, right? No, that's not a problem. But if I talk to myself, 15 years ago, I don't know that I would have envisioned myself as a full professor chairing a department, right? But here I am. I think that one of the barriers one of the struggles is that we, like in the media, in social media, in television, in the spaces where we see, people in power, we don't see ourselves there. And so, that's a subtle message that we get that, oh no, that's really a white space. I'm not white. And so it just doesn't connect. And so I think a way to approach this is going back with Mauricio, we need to start from young. And even as we're going through our process, really self-reflecting and honoring ourselves and our culture and what we bring, and knowing that we are assets and that we are valuable and we belong in these spaces. That takes a lot of work to get there, but it has to be internal. We have to come in from the inside out to get there, because the outside people are not going to bring us in.
Marjorie, I knew I was going to be great and successful when I was young. But I didn't know I was going to be here in education. No, I would say, I learned from a very young age, right? I learned that my parents really worked hard to get where they were, right? They made the ultimate sacrifice to come from Colombia, to give my brother and I the best opportunity they could for us, right? To make our lives better. So I knew I had big shoes to fill, right? Because my parents gave me those big shoes to fill. And I have everything to thank them for this whole process. But I will say, if you had asked me 20 years ago, hey, what would you be doing? This would not be it. Being in this office right now would not even be close to it. But, I think getting some mentors and really, having people that believe in you was really important for me in this, and just knowing that I could do it, right? And so I think, like you said, like it's easy for me to see us in these spaces because we are in these spaces now, right? But I think also too, just believing in yourself and really knowing that you can do it and that you're powerful, and going for it and try and get your goals and dreams.
There are, in my experience, there are times where just because you're sitting at the table doesn't mean that you get to choose what you're eating. And so just because you are represented in a committee doesn't mean that you're making policy and law, or that you have a say on approving or disapproving. And so that is, I believe, that is the way the optics and how pervasive the system is, that even when there can be a visually diverse group, the power exists still in the white men. And so and that's a very elusive, very pervasive system, because we have been told to be, the Latinx community, indigenous community, those of us who have been colonized, we are loyal. We are good to those that are good to us. And sometimes the invitation, the care that sometimes come with being invited to a table can be misinterpreted, right? And so just because you're there doesn't mean that we made it. And so we have to read, we have to dissect, we have to interrupt, and we have to share that capital on how you interrupt and question those motives, because we're not groomed, we're not told how to do that.
And I think that goes back on him to the education process, right? So that when we do get to the table, we're heard, right? When we do get to the table, we shake things up. When we do get to the table, that we are decision makers and policy makers at that table, right? And it may not be 100% of the policy, right? But we are influencing that policy to help the next wave, right? To help the next generation, to help those that we're mentoring.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think too that we need to, be mindful that there's like this intersectionality of belonging and who, all the obstacles we need to go through. So like, for example, as a woman, right? I am Hispanic, but in my own culture and in the time I grew up, so I'm dating myself, there was this double standard. Men got to do what they wanted. Women had to stay home and be, take care of their own reputations. And so, there's so many things that we've had to go through, but we need to be mindful too of, the culture, the gender, the sexual orientation, all of these things that are struggles that the system is set up to, oppress or keep out. So.
Marjorie, you just mentioned something so big here, and the fact that all of y'all have addressed this at some point just reaffirms for me what amazing leaders you are. But within representation, there is intersectionality, but it's also addressing the privileges that we have through those intersectionalities, right? And how can we use our own privilege to help move our comunidad further, right? So y'all, I'm just here being like, wah! To the point that I'm just like, y'all, if you just tuned in, this cafecito is Nuestra Presencia, an underrepresented group in a represented society. Please know that if you have any questions for these mighty fellows, if you have been joining us for the past 30 minutes, y'all can see that they knock it out of, they make a home run, they knock it out. But just letting y'all know, if you have any questions for them, please share them with them. Oh, and Veronica actually took that to heart, y'all. We have our first audience question. So Veronica asks, how can Latinx professionals and students go about combating those messages that we don't belong and become professors, superintendents, university chancellors, etc.? How do we teach our students to dream big? Love this question, Veronica. Thank you so much for that. So yeah, who would like to take the lead here?
I mean,
go ahead, Mauricio, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, starting at the K-12 level, right? We have to let students know that the path is there, right? They can do whatever they want. Let them realize that path. Let them realize their journey. Let them. I had a conversation today with a coworker who said, student, and this wasn't a Hispanic student, but said student wanted to be a vet or a veterinarian. We were looking at some grades and stuff like that and said, but maybe vet tech is in there. I said, but it's veterinarian is the goal. Let's make that the goal. Let's show the pathway to that realization, right? It might be community college, then UNCC, right? For a bachelor's degree, and then you go to veterinary school, wherever you want to, right? Because if you get a 4.0 in community college, and then you get a 4.0 for your bachelor's degree, you're pretty much writing your ticket wherever you want to go, regardless of what your high school GPA was. Right. And so realizing that, hey, these goals are there. Right. And so I tell my students all the time, if I talk to them, it's, hey, I want to be, I want to be in construction, or I want to be a mechanic or whatever. It's like, no, you want to run a crew. Like, you want to own a shop, and let's dream big. Right. Let's dream big so that what your goals are going to be. You can know what that path is going to be and journey is going to be for you. And know that they don't have to settle for what the typical is, that they can be great and they can do whatever they want.
Mauricio, I love that you mentioned that, because I would even say that is connected to the cafecito that we had before this one, our fourth cafecito, Nuestras Ganas, Post-Secondary Opportunities, which Veronica was one of our guests there with Carmen and Isaí. But you just saying that, I just got a deja vu, because it's that thing of like, we do not have the right to limit our students' dreams. That is not within our power. What is it, their dream? Okay, so how can we help them figure out that map of, okay, so you want to be at this place? These are the many pathways that you can be taking. See what I did there? Angel pathways, wink, wink. But helping our students through that process. Ooh, I love that.
And push them to dream bigger.
Yes. Yes.
I will say I try to be cautious on not prescribing or not projecting into my students also, because and I agree wholeheartely with Mauricio. I want them not to limit themselves, the opportunities. I want them to have plans early on. Like the first 10, 12 years of my career was working with college students. And at the college level, I was criticizing every chance I got the K through 12 systems, because at a college level, we continue to look at each other's and be, in a way, surprised as to why our college students are coming in already conditioned with a lot of mental health problems. Have you seen our K through 12 system? And so if we are not investing there, we shouldn't be surprised as to how they're entering the spaces, right? And at the same time, I think the capital here is the early access to resources.
Yeah.
Not only for the students, for the families, because we know that mi tía, mi abuela, mi primo, and mi padrino have a say on the sacrifice that we're making. And so I want to make sure that I am not telling you what to do. I want to make sure that I am taking away any burden, unnecessary burden caused by generational trauma that I can, by providing access, by asking the questions, and by working with you on you designing the plan, on you and your family designing the plan that is accessible and affordable to you. Because a college education is great, not if it is leading you to financial debt, not if you're coming out of college with $100,000 worth of loans. And so how can we access all the information that we can so that we're making the most responsible and appropriate choice or decision while dreaming big, while not limiting ourselves? And so that laboratory, it's what I call my office.
Oh my gosh, Angel, I love that. And I love how so many of you, a point that you've made is we need to start early, like not just high school, not middle school. Let's start from K. And that brings to my brain this wonderful program that exists in Vance County with their ESL. They're still called ESL team, so I'm going to call them ESL. But they have had for more than 20 years now, they have this amazing summer program called Mi Casa. And what they do there is that for all of the families and the student babies that are going to be joining them in kindergarten, they bring all of those families that summer before they join kindergarten and they join the educational system. And basically it's letting them know, hi, hola, we are here. We are the faces. We are the people that are going to be supporting you along the way. And guess what? We're going to be having so much fun together, but also we're going to be letting you know about the resources that are at your disposal. So basically already empowering them and also making this experience exciting and making it fun and making it approachable too, right? Because we are so well aware that if we are also talking about our multilingual learners just entering this educational system that exists in this country, that is intimidating, that is scary, and that's already starting to put those layers of inaccessibility, or you don't belong here because you do not know how to navigate this and your family doesn't either. So how about if we just remove that altogether and address the fact that yes, this system, you're entering it for the first time, and guess what? We're going to be supporting you in every single step of this process. We've got you. And the thing that blows my mind is that that program, that Mi Casa program in Vance County schools, that does not happen in every single county in North Carolina, which is like, what even is this? And it has been proven to be successful. So I just wanted to mention that, because to y'all's point of ensuring that we're creating spaces of belonging and starting from our babies, right? Ensuring that at no point are they faced with these very pernicious and harmful messages, and our families too, right? Of like, you are feeling othered, you do not belong here as much as you're attempting to, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so I want to say two things. One about starting early on, and one about when you get to the place where you're looking for access to higher ed. So when you're starting early on, what I want to say about that is that experiences are going to open doors. And so for us, many of us, if we have the fortune of going to visit our home countries as we're going through elementary school, through middle school, that's an experience that I've heard some of my students say they don't want to talk about it, but they should. They're experiencing two totally different geographical areas, countries, cultures, that, going back to the second point, when you go to the access point and you're applying to go to these universities and everything, will set you apart, will make you unique, will make you different than all of the applications that we see here that usually do a mission trip, they play a sport, they are, you know, president of a club, right? So universities are looking for people that are unique, that are going to make their student body more full. And so going back to the experiences, I feel that if our students get to, go to campus universities, go to community colleges, you know, travel, read. There's a lot of programs, free programs. I know that Dolly Parton sends out books to whoever wants a book, and reading is what's going to set anybody apart in the elementary levels. And she's now sending out multilingual books. I love Dolly Parton. They're free. So, you know, reading, exposure, you know, even going to the grocery store and having discussions about the different fruits, where they come from, all of that is going to really give that child, the brain, the metacognition opportunities to grow and be curious. So there's so many things that we can do from little that can open the eyes and the expectations and experiences that will then pay out at the end.
Marjorie, I love that. And y'all, our audience right now, appreciate each and every single one of you, because the questions are rolling in right now. Oh, you've been activating all of these neuron connections with our audience right now, y'all. So we're going to go with the first one from Carlos. They are asking, how as a student, how can I show my peers that they have options and opportunities to achieve success? I have tried so hard for 1.5 years, guiding them to find colleges or career professions that they are interested in. Few students have taken my advice, which brings me so much joy, but most do not bother. Am I just trying too hard, or am I not trying hard enough? What inspires you to keep pushing even when days feel too stressful? Ooh, Carlos is not holding back, huh? Okay. So who would like to address this question first, y'all?
I'll just present I don't necessarily think that this is a solution. I'm not the owner of the truth, but I think what I would suggest to Carlos is see it as a process and not an end goal. I don't think that I am going to make the change on all my Latinx folks here in Wilmington, but that doesn't prevent me from leaving an infrastructure, a sustainable process, a system that my successor can improve and make better. And so as you continue to support and peer-to-peer, it's to me a high impact practice. Peer-to-peer is so powerful. And so I commend you from doing that. I would say, don't sacrifice your well-being, don't sacrifice your wellness, care for you as you continue to care for others, and show that you're doing it as a collective, right? You're not doing for them, you are doing with them. Ask questions. Sometimes, again, it's don't tell them what to do. Maybe ask, share your story, and by sharing, maybe they get curious, as Marjorie said, and they can start asking the questions themselves. So that's a suggestion I would share.
Yeah, I think if the majority are not following, that's information in itself, right?
Right.
So what is it that I'm going with Angel. So I think it's opened the space for dialogue for them to, you know, think about what is it that they see themselves doing, what space makes them happy, and then investigate areas that you can make a living in those spaces that actually fulfill you as a person. So there's not one size fits all there. And college is not for everybody right after high school. Maybe it needs to be later, you know, maybe it isn't. And so I think the message that we put out, that if you don't go to college, you're a failure, It's also something that we need to be careful, right? It's just, are you following the path that's going to make you a citizen that's going to serve you well and serve the community? I think it's a better question.
Yeah, and I think that's not immediate, right, Marjorie? Like,
right.
I think as leaders, right? And I think, Carlos, I think you're trying to do this work as a leader, right? And I think as leaders, sometimes you get the immediate and sometimes you don't. And so as an assistant principal, right, I might encourage a teacher to go and go into a program, right, and try to become an administrator and go down that path. And I might see the fruit of that labor, right? And I might be able to have those conversations with that person directly. You know who I'm talking to. But I think also as an assistant principal, right, as a leader in the community, I also know as a teacher, right, because I think that's where my job really is. And so it's not necessarily the immediate goals that you see, because that'll click for some people really quickly. But I think the majority of the impact you're going to make, you will never see. And I think that's the hardest part. You will never see the impact, because it might be 5 years later and that person has left your immediate circle. That person has left the spaces that you're in, and they realize, you know what Carlos said to me, he told me that I can be this, I can do it, and I need to try and push myself. And then they do. Right. And so as a teacher, I've had so many students come back to me years after and just say, thank you for all the things you did. Thank you for making me who I am today. Right. And so it's not immediate. And that's really hard as a leader, because it's 90% of the time it's not immediate. And so the few that you are impacting directly and immediately, take those joys and run with them. And know that the other 90% that you've talked to, that you've pushed, will eventually realize, hey, I remember this was said to me and they were right. I remember what Carlos said to me that day when we were in the cafeteria having lunch together, and I need to thank him, but I don't know how to find him. So you'll never get that thanks. And so that's the selflessness, right, that we put in as leaders in our community. And it's really just hard to sometimes accept that, but know that you're appreciated.
Y'all, and connecting, y'all already kind of sort of started answering this other audience question that we have from Elaine, LatinxEd's Executive Director, La Jefa. But I'm going to say it just as she wrote it, because that way y'all can decide. But Elaine asks, what are your go-to practices with navigating real talk about the barriers with our young people without inhibiting their ability to dream? And she mentioned some of the barriers like discrimination, racism, and policy barriers. So y'all can keep this conversation going, but I was like, I see the connection. I just want to sneak in her question right there.
Hit it, Marjorie. You're going. You're thinking already. Go. Oh, sorry. Carol's the moderator. I'm sorry.
No.
Not me not trying to put Marjorie like not on the spot, but I heard that and I was like, Marjorie, pray tell, cuéntanos, chica.
No, I think that some of the strategies, people don't like to be told what to do, and who am I to tell you what to do, right? So I think one of the big strategies I use is I ask questions, and it's more of I wonder questions. So they're worried that they're not going to be able to. Here's one. I'm applying to 5 colleges, but I'm not going to be able to pay the tuition, so I am just not going to apply. And so I'm like, so why not? Right? And it's the tuition. I'm like, well, have you been admitted yet? You don't have that question in front of you. So why don't you apply? You can always say no. Right. And so just leave him with that thought. Oftentimes they come back and say, I said, okay, I applied. And, there's ways to pay for college. We can tackle that question next. Just first go and apply where you want to go, that you think you'll be happy. We'll figure out the next step. You can't worry about something that hasn't happened, right? Well, that's a strategy. Just take it step by step and say, so what will happen if you don't do it? Why not? Go ahead, apply, that type of stuff.
I love that gentle approach, Marjorie. And y'all, I think Mauricio, your tech difficulties hopped on over to Angel. So
I was gonna say Elaine scared him away. But no, I think that to touch base with Marjorie too on that question, like, yeah, absolutely, right? You have to give them the tools to be successful, and they have to figure it out on their own, right? So ask those questions, right? How can we do this together, right? What do you need to be put in place in order to be successful? We do it so often with students in the classroom, right? As teachers, as leaders with the people under us, right? We don't tell them what to do. We ask them how they would do it, and then make suggestions, right, to make it better or their own or whatever. And so really just, ensuring that we're helping them be successful and giving them the tools. And again, I think it goes back to what we talked about before when Carlos was talking about his question, ask his question. It may not be an immediate, right? We may not know if they ever get to college, if they ever, do whatever, like break down those barriers or what they thought was a barrier for them. But know that we gave them the tools to be successful. And that's the important part.
Yeah, and I wanted to add one more thing, like a strategy or a tool. So I know that if Mauricio gets a call and says, look, I need help with this, what's Mauricio gonna do? He's gonna help, right? Or if Angel gets the call, he's like, I don't know what this is. Angel's gonna say, well, show me, let me see if we can figure it out. So I would say one of the strategies too is like connect whoever's having the question or the concern, if you can, to somebody in the institution that perhaps can help. I get those all the time. Oh, my daughter's applying and she hasn't heard anything in 3 weeks. I'm like, oh, let me see who you can text or email. And then I send them that information and connect them, right? So I think as Latinos, that's part of what we do, right? We're like, let me connect. If I can't help you, let me connect you. So don't be shy and start pointing people out in those institutions. We're here to help.
I think I used you for that, Marjorie, right?
Did I write a letter? No.
You're like speaking at me. No, I'm just kidding.
Y'all are too funny, but I'm actually going to be linking this to another question that I have in my mind, and y'all have actually talked about this before, of who or what has been there for you as you navigate these spaces, oftentimes being the only one. And connected to that, how have mentors played a role in your own leadership paths? And mentors does not mean that, they have to be older than you. Oftentimes we can find mentorship within the youth. So I'm just curious, like, what has your support system looked like as you have navigated these spaces yourselves?
Yeah.
I'll start, I guess. So, I think you always attach yourself to somebody, right? And when I started as a teacher, it was probably the strongest teacher I've ever met in my entire life, was Miss Scheffler, and she pushed me to be the best I could be. She pushed me to be the best teacher I could be, to be the best leader I can be, and all those things. And I think now, as an administrator, I look at my principal that hired me, and he is every day. He pushes me. Every single day. We're best friends now, and I just spent a couple days in Texas with him on another endeavor that I'm trying to get into, and he pushed me really hard, right? And after I got assistant principal of the year, he's pushing me now for the next step. He pushes me every single day to be a better version of me from the day before. And so I think you have to find, so who is that person for you, right? And so it might be Marjorie because, she has a professor that's in her department that's looking up to her, that's trying to get that next step, right? It could be one of the students that's in Mi Casa for Angel, right? It could be, one of Erica's biology students in her classroom, right? It could be one of the people in our teen youth groups, right? And so who is that person for you that's pushing you to your next step to make you the best version of you? And really, honestly, it's finding that mentor, regardless of nationality, heritage, whatever, and then creating those spaces for the next wave. Again, the next wave, right? the next wave, I think, is our mantra now for this one. I'm claiming that.
Oh, Mauricio, I love that.
I think I love the last part from Mauricio, because if it had not been for a big Black woman from Chattanooga, Tennessee, or a white woman from rural Pennsylvania, I wouldn't be here. I would still be searching for that Latinx professional who would take me under their wing. And so I when it comes to representation, sometimes as I battle that journey, I also introduce cultural competence into the current people, staff, professionals, classroom, whoever that are here, that are operating, because it's a shared responsibility. And I think Marjorie mentioned the value of adding cultural competence to, even if we don't have a lack of diversity within the professors and administrators, etc. I am blessed that I found one. My current supervisor, I think, is not only a person that I look up to. She is Peruana, and she's just the definition of true leadership. And she does it without claiming to be a leader or my mentor. And in fact, she says that I am her mentor. And sometimes I'm like, I think that's the way she's gonna ask me for a project soon, and she's trying to build me up. She's trying to build me up, and she is the first Latina that has invested within 15 months, invested time and energy in me, and she accepts me for who I am and checks in with me, and that those qualities are you don't find them often. So when you find them, even if they don't reply to you or text, emails, whatever, keep them informed. Yo, I'm good. I'm now here. Don't worry about replying, because I know you won't. But keeping them informed, because that piece of gratitude, that piece of, and there is a leadership TED Talk called the Lollipop Moment. That piece of telling somebody who has impacted you is part of their professional development. So it is not hierarchical. It's telling somebody that you consider a mentor, somebody that you aspire or that you look up to, telling them how influential they've been, that can completely keep them going. And we know that if we see somebody, or if we regard somebody as a mentor, we need to keep them going. And so I would say, stay humble to your needs, ask for help, and when you find that person, stay connected to that person.
Angel, I love that, because you're saying how getting that feedback can be our development in and of itself. I'm going to be full transparent. I have a folder in my inbox that's just called wins, because ever so often when I'm just feeling like, is this work worth it? I will go back to that folder and I will start reading messages that I've gotten. And I'm like, these people will not go out of their way to write these words and send them to me if they didn't consider them to be real, and if the impact that they felt, they didn't feel it to be authentic. So I appreciate you mentioning that, Angel. And oh, y'all, I'm like, we could keep on going forever, but I have a final question for y'all. And we have talked about the importance of providing spaces of identity formation for students in a timely way, us basically being like, the moment that they come out of the womb, we're providing it for them. But a point that y'all touched upon early on is how representation can inevitably lead to burnout. So I want to ask all of y'all, how do we prevent the future generations from burning out for the sake of representation? I know I want to wrap us up with a bang. You're welcome.
That's a deep one for the last 2 minutes. But I think that as we diversify our workspaces, by sometimes we have music in the room, and why is it not multicultural music, and not just the one type of rock and roll, or, you know, like, you know, like in college campuses, why is it only Taco Tuesday instead of like all these beautiful varieties, right? So there's some subtle things that we
Taco
can
every
do.
day, Marjorie?
No, arepas every day,
Arepas every day.
empanadas.
Sorry.
Right? Why can't we have these subtle things that feed the soul and the stomach and the heart, you know, the music, the food, the language that, you know, make the space a place where we belong. Right? I think that is a way that we're going to really like encourage to you to belong, instead of feeling like you're going to a place where you have to act and be strong, because it's not where you belong, right? You burn out. And so when we start making everything more multicultural, I think it's going to open spaces and less burnout and more welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredibly beautiful. I think role model for the students. Stop using academic jargon that we have to then translate for our students, because that's not what. But role model. If we're asking students to be vulnerable, if we're asking students to ask for help, if we are all these things that we're asking our students to do, role model for them. Not too long ago, I was talking about entering healing practices or caring for your well-being, and a student asked me, what does that look like? And from that moment on, I'm like, yes, you know, include a practical, mundane, and everyday practice that has worked for me, and tell them, now you have to find yours, because what works for me doesn't necessarily have to work for you. But role modeling, sharing the story. We are good storytellers. We're storytellers, I think, by nature. And so let's do that with the intent of not making them see our way, but with the intent of them finding themselves.
Ooh. Oh, that is beautiful. And Mauricio, I did you have that one last thought? I saw your eyes moving around like, ooh, that just activated a bunch of thoughts in my brain.
No, I just think throughout the two comments there, I was just thinking, right, like it's exponential. The work that we're doing is exponential, right? And so we have to be able to help the next three. And those three will create 9. Those 9 will create 27. And those 27 will create whatever 27 times 3 is. And so that was really deep, right?
Yeah.
So, but no, it's exponential, right? And so we are breaking those barriers. We are creating this movement, right? And we have to continue to empower those behind us. The next wave. I told you that was our motto now. The next wave, to be able to be successful, right? And creating 3 more. And then they can create 3, and then they create 3, and eventually, right? It's not a tomorrow solution, but eventually we will be there, right? Eventually we will have the representation that we need in those spaces, in all of the spaces, so that we can feel welcome.
Mauricio and I are thinking about the tacos. Forget it. That's last cafecito was about we advise, they decide. This cafecito is about what is 27 plus times 3. That's gonna be the t-shirt.
To the third power.
Ese cafecito es corazón contento, panza llena, corazón contento. Oh my gosh, y'all. Well, what a way to wrap up this cafecito season. Needless to say, y'all have managed to leave me speechless, but my heart is full just knowing that we have leaders like you supporting our students and supporting our families. Right now, our amazing Caterina, communications coordinator, she's going to be dropping in the chat the many ways that y'all can be connecting with these amazing fellows, because needless to say, I still can't believe that the hour has already passed by. I just feel like my brain is just like, oh, it's activated and I just want to keep this going. But needless to say, if you want to keep this conversation going with them, you will have their email addresses and a few other social media connections there to connect with them. But with that being said, y'all, thank you so much to the 3 of you, Angel, Mauricio, and Marjorie. to our 12 other amazing fellows that joined us during this season as well. And we also just want to give a big thank you to each and every single one of you who's still joining us here and are tuning in, because without you, this work would not be possible. And now the shameless plug there as well is, without your support, whether it is monetary or it's without, spreading the word, we would not be able to do the work that we do, being an educational nonprofit. So if you will find in the comments as well, links to be able to donate to our work. Right now, we have a birthday bingo bash because our 4th LatinxEd birthday happened last week. So if you've got the coins, please come through. If you've got just the power within the buttons that you have to share and help tell others to support, you can do that as well. And we will also be sharing in the chat a link for you to sign up for our newsletter, because this cafecito is just a little sample of the work that we do and the amazing people that live here in North Carolina that are doing amazing work to support our Latina and immigrant families. So all of that to say, so appreciative of each and every single one of you, Marjorie, Mauricio, Angel. And yeah, hasta la próxima, y'all. Bye.